It wasn't just a performance. It wasn't just music. It was a moment that froze the internet in real time. The kind of cultural flashpoint where fashion, symbolism, rivalry, and spectacle collide into something people can't stop talking about. When Kendrick Lamar stepped onto the stage at the Super Bowl in 2025, millions expected precision, intensity, and lyrical dominance. What they didn't expect was that one small glittering detail hanging from his neck would end up outshining nearly everything else that year. By the way, welcome to Celebrity Rap Life, where the spotlight never fades, comebacks are built from chaos, and every headline tells a deeper story. Like, subscribe, and stay locked in because the story is about to unfold. At first glance, the pendant looked simple. A lowercase letter, clean and minimal, resting against his chest as lights bounced off it in sharp flashes. But simplicity was an illusion. That A wasn't just jewelry. It was a statement engineered to provoke, to invite interpretation, and to dominate conversation long after the music faded. Set with 515 natural diamonds and valued at $1.2 million, the piece wasn't just expensive, it was strategic. Within minutes of the performance, screenshots began circulating, zoomed-in images, slow-motion clips, threads dissecting every angle. Social media didn't just react, it erupted. People weren't asking whether it looked good, they were asking what it meant. And that question became the fuel that turned a piece of jewelry into the most talked about diamond moment of the year. According to the Jewels That Broke the Internet Index, compiled for De Beers Group, that single pendant outperformed every other high-profile jewelry appearance across a full year of celebrity events. It ranked number 1, surpassing moments that, under normal circumstances, would have dominated headlines for weeks. Among those was Rihanna, who appeared at the Met Gala wearing 24.5-carat double diamond brooches from Bulgari. Her look was polished, extravagant, and widely praised. Yet even that level of luxury couldn't match the sheer volume of conversation sparked by Lamar's pendant. Then there was Kate Middleton, whose stacked diamond rings generated global attention, and Taylor Swift, whose engagement ring became one of the most discussed relationship symbols online. Each moment carried its own weight, its own audience, its own cultural relevance, but none of them managed to dominate the conversation the way Lamar's understated yet explosive piece did. What made it different wasn't just the diamonds, it was the ambiguity. Some viewers immediately linked the A to pgLang, Lamar's creative communications company. The branding connection made sense, clean, intentional, and aligned with his reputation for layered storytelling. But others weren't convinced. They saw something entirely else, something more confrontational. The debate quickly shifted toward his ongoing tension with Drake. Fans began connecting the pendant to lyrics from Not Like Us, the Grammy-winning diss track that had already intensified one of hip-hop's most closely watched rivalries. In that context, the A stopped being a logo and started being interpreted as a coded message, subtle but deliberate. And that uncertainty was exactly what amplified its impact. If the meaning had been obvious, the conversation might have ended quickly, but because it wasn't, people kept talking. They argued, they theorized, they revisited the performance again and again, searching for clues. Every replay generated more engagement, more speculation, more noise. By the numbers, the scale was undeniable. The pendant generated over 16.4 million mentions within a year. More than 12.6 million of those came from social media platforms, while nearly 200,000 came from earned media coverage. Those figures weren't just high, they were dominant. No other jewelry moment came close. The campaign, A Diamond is Forever, also run by De Beers Group, highlighted how the pendant achieved the highest overall impact score based on 10 performance indicators. These included total mentions, audience reaction, media prominence, and what they called buzz longevity. That last factor mattered more than most. It measured how long people kept talking, not just how loudly they reacted at the start. And Lamar's pendant didn't fade. Weeks after the Super Bowl, it was still being discussed. Months later, it was still referenced in conversations about symbolism in music and fashion. It became one of those rare cultural artifacts that refuses to disappear because it taps into something deeper than aesthetics. Part of that staying power comes from Lamar himself. He doesn't operate like most artists. Every detail in his work tends to carry intention, whether it's in his lyrics, visuals, or public appearances. That reputation changes how audiences interpret what he does. People assume meaning, and more often than not, they're right to. So when he wore a diamond-covered A on one of the biggest stages in the world, it didn't feel random. It felt like a message waiting to be decoded. The Super Bowl performance itself was already positioned at the center of cultural attention. It's one of the few events where music, sports, and global media converge at maximum scale. Anything that happens there is instantly magnified. But Lamar's pendant didn't just benefit from that spotlight, it redirected it. Instead of the conversation staying focused solely on the performance, it split. Half the audience talked about the music, the other half talked about the pendant, and eventually those two conversations merged, reinforcing each other and extending the lifespan of both. There's also the visual factor. Diamonds reflect light in a way that naturally draws attention, especially under stage conditions designed for broadcast. Every camera angle caught flashes of the pendant. Every movement sent reflections across the screen. It was impossible to ignore, even for viewers who weren't actively looking for it. That visual presence turned into digital currency. Clips featuring the pendant performed better. Images highlighting it were shared more widely. It became the focal point in thumbnails, edits, and commentary videos. In a space driven by attention metrics, it consistently outperformed everything around it. Meanwhile, comparisons to other jewelry moments only strengthened its position. Rihanna's brooches represented luxury, Kate Middleton's rings represented tradition and continuity, Taylor Swift's engagement ring represented romance and personal narrative, but Lamar's pendant represented something entirely different. It represented conversation. Not admiration alone, not status alone, but engagement at scale. People weren't just looking at it, they were interacting with it, debating it, interpreting it. That level of participation is what pushed it to the top of the index. Another layer to consider is timing. The pendant appeared during a period when Lamar was already at the peak of cultural relevance. His music was dominating charts, his name was central in industry discussions, and his rivalry with Drake had reached a level where even small gestures were scrutinized. In that environment, even a subtle symbol can carry enormous weight. The A became a lens through which fans examined everything else he was doing. It wasn't isolated, it was part of a larger narrative unfolding in real time. And that narrative didn't stay confined to music fans. Fashion outlets picked it up, business publications analyzed its branding implications, cultural commentators debated its meaning. It crossed boundaries, reaching audiences that might not have been paying attention to Lamar otherwise. That kind of cross-domain impact is rare. It's what transforms a moment into a phenomenon. There's also an economic dimension. High-value jewelry has always been associated with status and influence, but in this case, the financial value became secondary to cultural value. Yes, it was worth $1.2 million, but its real worth was measured in attention, influence, and narrative control. By wearing it, Lamar effectively created a focal point that he didn't need to explain. The audience did the work for him. They built theories, created content, and extended the life of the moment without any additional input from him. That's a level of efficiency most brands and artists aim for but rarely achieve. Looking back, it becomes clear that the pendant's success wasn't accidental. It was the result of multiple factors aligning at the right time. The stage, the artist, the context, the design, and the ambiguity all worked together to create something larger than the sum of its parts. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a catalyst. And in a year filled with high-profile fashion statements and luxury showcases, that catalyst proved more powerful than anything else. It didn't rely on size or extravagance alone. It relied on meaning, or at least the possibility of meaning. That distinction is important because in an era where attention is fragmented and fleeting, the ability to sustain conversation is more valuable than the ability to capture it briefly. Kendrick Lamar's A pendant didn't just capture attention, it held it, it redirected it, it multiplied it. And that's why when the data was analyzed and the rankings were finalized, it stood alone at the top, not just as a piece of jewelry, but as a defining cultural moment that showed how something small, when executed with precision and placed in the right context, can dominate an entire year's worth of conversation. Welcome to the culture. Hit subscribe, stay curious, and never stop listening.